Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I begin in the name of God, the Beneficent, the Merciful. My respected sisters, brothers in Islam and in humanity. Assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you all. It's an honor to be here and to have this opportunity to discuss a very important issue in life. That is that our responsibilities as human beings. I bear witness that there is no God but one. He is the Creator, the one who has given us this life. And without a doubt, were God not to exist, certainly we would not exist. And if anyone was to say that we are a product of an accident, my sister Shannon, who came before, and she spoke about her little child, Nicholas, you can imagine how much care and tender love and intense focus was required to bring about the continuity of life. Now, if I was to say that that was just a fluke and an accident, and that if you looked at all the equipment in the hospital, millions of dollars worth to sustain one child, and all of this all came by chance, really, this is really absurd in any statement anybody can make. For there is tremendous amount of design, tremendous amount of wisdom, and it's not a game of probabilities, and we talk about this enormous grace called life. Ironically and sadly, as we speak, thousands of lives have been taken as we speak, yet we talk about taking blood to save one child, how precious that love is, how precious that child is, and how much we smiled when we saw the child survive and come out to be healthy and beautiful. And yet, the irony of the human race on the flip side is that we're so quick-witted to pull a trigger and become trigger-happy to drop bombs that annihilate thousands of those precious lives. The human race is an ironic race, that as much as we love and we want to preserve life, that we are quick in eliminating it too. So this discussion hopefully will give us focus that we as a human race have to work very hard to remove this irony, to remove this contradiction, and to make ourselves as human race as productive and progressive human beings. Not on the basis of race and color, nor religion, but on the basis of bringing justice for all on earth. God in the Quran says, "Kuntum khayra ummatin ukhrijat linnas." You are the best in the community. Kuntum khayra ummatin ukhrijat linnas. You're the best in the community. Allah says in the Quran, "Ta'muruna bil ma'ruf." You promote good, wa tanhawna 'anil munkar. And you forbid evil. wa tu'minuna billah. And you believe in God. When a human being promotes good, forbids evil, and keeps focus for God is the only entity, the only being that gives completion to all the moral arguments. For if there is no God in the equation, then there is no real reason for the completion of the moral argument. It can be short-lived, but it cannot have an eternal process. It cannot have an eternal vision unless there is a being that really has a purpose to have created us. And ultimately, all our discussions are purposeful and purpose-based. Speaking of this great event of Karbala, as you know, which took place 61 years after the migration of the Holy Prophet from Mecca to Medina, which was a very short period of time, considering the establishment, the finality of the religion of God, which is Islam. Let me make a very quick footnote here that the religion of Islam did not come 14 centuries ago. It is not the youngest Abrahamic religion. That's a misstatement, it's not correct. Islam is the original religion that came with Adam, who was the first human being on earth, who is also the first prophet on earth according to Islamic principles. And Islam was completed in its fullest form 14 centuries ago. Thus, all prophets that we know of that were great and not so great that we don't know, but particularly Noah, Abraham, who's the patriarch of the Abrahamic faiths, hence his name, you find Isaac, Ishmael, Jacob, Joseph, and on, and Jesus, of course, peace be upon him, and the final prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and his family. These prophets all came with the same message, the message of the belief in one God, the belief in the Day of Judgment, because if we don't believe in the Day of Judgment, our moral argument becomes bankrupt. And therefore, we are liable for our deeds, and there is a God that sees everything we do. And we have been created on this earth not to be on this earth. We've been placed on this earth temporarily in order to be tested on our deeds and how well we're going to promote good and forbid evil. And that is really the main purpose of why we were created. And all prophets came with the same message. And that our obligation is to promote good and forbid evil. Forbiddance of evil is equally important as the promotion of good. Actually, they're all part of the same idea, but a little more granular. And that the purpose of our creation was not for us to be tested, but rather to be given the opportunity to recognize the infinite mercy of God on this earth, so that we continue to receive His eternal grace in the next world, which is why we were created. We were not created for this world, we were actually created for the next world. The world that has eternity in it, the world that has eternal grace, the world that awaits us, that has no injustice, the world that has no pain, the world that has no negatives, quote unquote. Because at the end of the day, even the atheist who does not believe in God insists that were God to exist, then happiness and bliss should be the prevalent lifestyle. And that's correct. That argument is correct. That demand is correct. Of course, the difference is that in this world we have been graced with autonomy, which is that limited free will that we have, in which we've been given the ability to cause good and to cause harm. And the options are both on the table. And our obligation is to encourage each other to promote good and to forbid damage. That's the bottom line. Going to the events of Karbala, which is the great event that took place 61 AH, which is about 1350 years back, we find that the situation as an example, people ask, this event of Karbala, which was the great tragedy in Karbala, where the grandson of the Prophet was massacred with his family, why is that so important? If you take the equation that, let us say, up to 200 people were massacred on a battlefield by an army of at least 20 to 30,000 soldiers, why is this such an important event? Because many massacres have taken place in empires. Why is this one so important? And why do you keep focusing on this one? And why not take all of them as important lessons? Sure, they're all lessons. All massacres are lessons. The difference is that this particular massacre did not happen except because one side wanted to promote evil and forbid good, and the other side wanted to promote good and forbid evil. That's the main reason. Whereas other massacres that take place, typically, the innocent are taken not because they want to promote good, but because a tyrant wants to conquer them and enslave them. That's typically the reason in society. You don't get examples of two groups who are exact opposites facing each other, and if you examine that, the human race has come to the conclusion that it's not the quantity a person possesses, it's the quality that the person possesses that's at value. And the quality can have no value unless there's a moral argument behind it, which implies that a moral individual is superior than an individual who is materially endowed. So I could own the wealth of the universe. I could own the knowledge of the universe. I could control the universe. But if I am immoral, I am not good at all. Whereas a person owns nothing, a pauper who is extremely poor, barely surviving on this earth, but has a high moral standard, then by the degree of examples and comparatives, we would say that the individual who is on moral ground is superior to the owner of the universe. So notice, quantity falls apart because what trumps always is quality. In the scientific arguments, studying science and as a scientist that I studied, one thing that was always profound to me was that science is a methodology of observing the reality of the universe. It's really quantification. When we study qualitative analysis and quantitative analysis, you will find that when we put quality in science, it becomes philosophical. When we put true values in science, you start becoming a philosopher. You're no longer a purist in science. I say this with certainty, that no scientist who's an empiricist can dare say, oh, such a beautiful sun. You can say the sun, intensely hot, size, etc., describe it, but you cannot put what we say, those kinds of qualities of beauty and love and goodness, because science does not have it. There is no terminology in science where you study good physics and evil physics. There's no such thing. You can use physics in a good way and use it in an evil way, but that's putting quality and value after you've understood physics. Just like nuclear science is nuclear science. Explosion and implosion are just physical realities. There's no value to any of them. It's what do you do with it and how do you apply it where the value is applied. So notice there is more to science, which science cannot grasp. And I'm not denigrating science. Science is a fantastic tool. It's a needed tool. It's the tool by which we measure. But the human race is above science. So it's ironic those who claim there is no God and they use science as the mother of all. To me, that is very myopic and childish. But no human being can survive those arguments. But sadly, even in academia, we have agnosticism and atheism that's pervasive with this misconception that somehow we can get away with what we call little loose talk and thinking that it's come under some garb of authority when it doesn't have it. And that's the irony. Let's face the facts that as a human race, we all agree that it's the moral argument that's the most important. That's where all the confusion comes from. We all agree unanimously that the promotion of good and the forbiddance of evil is a standard status quo that we all have to adhere to. Don't we all agree? It would be foolish for anyone to say otherwise. Even a criminal, when they commit the crime, they will argue in the court of law why they did it for the good of what they did. They'll never stand in front of the judge and say, no, Your Honor, I'd like to promote injustice. I'd like to be the flag bearer of evil. You won't survive. But if you can hide under the garb of good while committing the evil, maybe you'll survive. So then what trumps everything? The promotion of good and the forbiddance of evil. Isn't that interesting? Then if you study even the movie industry, even you study the Wrestling Federation, which is all fictitious, and there's the good guy and the bad guy. It's funny, right? Many a times we'll hold on to the underdog, who's the bad guy, but it's because we feel sorry for the bad guy. It's still a good thing, feeling sorry. So you find that at the end of the day, that moral argument is the most important driving factor to everything. So when we commemorate this great tragedy in Karbala, it's really in the altar of the highest moral standards. That's why it's so important. That's why the media of Karbala is so powerful and growing rapidly on earth, that today the world is realizing the importance of that great sacrifice, because the world today, the majority of the world, is enslaved. We are slaves of an oligarchic system, what we call the corporatocracies of the world, that are really converging into this conglomerate group of people who are monopolizing the Earth's resources, where 95% of the Earth's resource is being consumed by a 5% population. We're slaves. We've created silent slave masters. It's no longer the chain and the whip that used to be in the olden times. It's the banking system, the IMF, the International Monetary Funds, and the World Banks that come and enslave us. These are all designed to create enslavement. You go to all parts of the world today, you'll see that if a nation is succeeding, especially in the continent of Africa, unfortunately, they make sure that you take loans where the interest rates are so high It's impossible to pay back. This is the way you enslave a nation. And then you take their resources, you take their rights, and you trample them, and you steamroll them, and you destroy their populations. You cause civil strife in those societies, and then destroy the very essence of humanity, so that the conglomerates can get wealthy with what they take from those needy personalities. That's the problem in the world today. That so much killing is taking place, so much, that we have been, especially in the West, unfortunately, buffered and immunized into thinking, oh, that's only 1,000 lives, we can afford it. Or how about when Madeleine Albright is asked about Iraq, and 500,000 Iraqi children are dying because of the embargo. She says, we can afford it. I'd like to see 500,000 of her children be killed, huh? And we can afford it. That's the stupidity of mankind at the moral level. We're talking about at the moral level. That when our children are being annihilated and enslaved because some big shot wants to sit on his high seat up there and decide the destiny of my family, I'd get infuriated. But where does it stop? Where does the buck stop? Unfortunately, it's not stopping. The machinery is getting larger. And we find where the stopping is coming, and where that vision of the society is coming, is in the realization that something must be done to reverse this engine. This immoral institution that has been created to destroy us all, it needs to be reversed. It needs guidance. It needs role models. It needs a direction, and it needs divine intervention. Otherwise, it's impossible. The system is too big to unplug it. And I'm a believer that it was preordained and given to us on a silver platter through the tragedy of the grandson of the Holy Prophet, Hussain ibn Ali alayhi salatu wasalam, who went to Karbala to show us what does it take to stop tyrants. If it means it's blood, then let it be. But if that's what it's going to take to bring humanity to fruition, to justice, to equity, then let it happen. And today we're in a world where we live in the West. Our obligation is to make people aware that let us not be subjected to all kinds of whimsical systems out there to fool us and hoodwink us so that we become a party to the promotion of what those conglomerates want. We will not stop it, I'm telling you, unless we dig deep into our own souls and we ask the basic question, what am I doing on this earth and why am I here? Why was I created? Am I a fluke? Am I an accidental being that just came on this earth to feed the refrigerator so the refrigerator can feed me? Is that what it's all about? No. We're highly purposeful. Every human being is endowed with a spirit. I'm a firm believer in that. I have never met a human being who is not self-contained with such power and abilities that it's not external, it's internal. Every one of us is endowed. A mother whose son is born premature is endowed with so much spirit that she would have been willing to go up mountains, whatever it takes, to bring her child healthy on this earth. That's the spirit we all possess. That's what we have, my brothers and sisters, I'm telling you. Each one of us has it. It doesn't have to be a Muslim. The whole human race has it. I truly believe when the angels were commanded to bow, when Adam was given the spirit of life, there's a reason why they were commanded to bow. Because what's dormant in us is so special, it's so powerful, that scientists have studied that that inner motivation is the most powerful thing the human being possesses. Okay? You and I have that spirit. We don't have to go to the desert or the mountains of Himalayas to meet a pundit to understand it. It's in us. We don't have to get it externally. It's internal. It's a question of checking and understanding the internal soul and spirit. And the power that we possess, even scientists say, that when people who are stuck under a car, if you try to lift a car, you won't be able to do it. But even women have been able to lift a car. Under extreme conditions, they do it. That's the power we possess. And I believe that if you and I look deep in our hearts and ask ourselves, how productive and proactive can I be not for monetary gains, not to be popular, not to receive accolades from the world, not to become a superstar. We're not interested in that. To satisfy the inner soul, which has been hardwired to do good and forbid evil. What can I do to maximize myself while I live on this transient earth? That, I think, is the most satisfying, most gratifying thing you and I can do while we exist. And at the end of the day, ask any philosopher, what's the object in life? Why are you studying in this university right now? Why are you gaining an education? Because you want a superior future. For what reason? Well, I want to be happy. I want to have something under my belt. That even if I don't get a job, at least I have dignity. That I'm an educated person. There are people who are making 7 figures in Hollywood who never got a high school diploma. They feel incomplete. And they get a GED. They go to the university. They're very successful monetarily, but they feel incomplete when you don't have that honor for education. So yes, education is an important tool, extremely important. It's essential like oxygen. We should get it. But when we get it, what is it all for? We would answer for peace, tranquility that I have it. Because time, as we know, is a vector. And it's a one direction vector. You cannot go backwards in time. You can only go forward. It's an irony. It is a vector, but it's one direction. And yet we know that in this one direction, God is telling me that your time is so short, so limited, that you have to be extremely efficient in your limited time, that you don't know when you will leave this earth. You may think that when you reach old age, you die. No, death does not discriminate. It takes an infant in the womb of its mother to the very old of the old. And God is saying to us, you could be anywhere in between that scale. Prepare yourselves. Don't waste your time. Be productive. Be proactive. Look deep into yourself. And I'm telling you, I speak with experience on this from the point of view that I've seen it. I'm a firm believer in it. Each and every one of us is incredibly endowed. Don't ever go home thinking I'm a loser, I've got nothing in this world. Don't ever say that. Don't ever say that. That's a huge mistake. I have never seen a human being unable to read the inner power that they possess to bring about the fruition of this promotion of good and forbiddance of evil that gives us inner tranquility. I tell you, there's this movement of not keeping with the Joneses. As you know, when you become very greedy in this society, you try to keep up with the Joneses. And you find that if my neighbor has a big house, I need a bigger house. If I have a car, I need a bigger car. That race always brings unhappiness. But they say the grass is always greener on the other side. But when you start to retract and say, no, I'm not going on this wild goose chase. I'm going to look inside and find tranquility in my own self. And I'll be satisfied with my needs. And yes, the wants are infinite. Should I have an infinite desire to constantly prove something? What am I trying to prove by showing the size of my house? What am I trying to prove? Oh, that you should respect me because I'm a rich man. Is that tranquility? That tranquility is actuated from the external. That means when I get a pat on my back, wow, bravo, you're great, I feel good. So I'm always dependent on other people's comments. I think that's the wrong move. The real happiness is to look deep inside and understand that there's a purpose in life and I've been created for a reason and the goal is in me. Let me bring it out. Whatever I love to do, do it with a passion. And there's been studies, even Daniel Pink has written a book called Drive. And in his book he says that the most successful people are the ones who do things for the passion of it. Not for monetary gains, for the passion of it. They've even done studies that what makes Apple so successful as a producer of all these gadgets that we're carrying today. It's because they do it from the heart. And there's studies done even on TED Talk that there are 3, it's called the golden rule, the golden circles. The center is why. The next one is what. The very outer is how. You find people who fail usually come from how to what to why. The ones who pass are the ones who say why, what, how. Because it's not about doing it in the reverse. It's the inner passion that we have. When we have love for something, express it properly. And Daniel Pink shows that those who went to art schools, they did a 10-year study, and the students who were in art school because they loved art, they had a passion for art, 10 years later were making the most money. They had the greatest notoriety. They were the most successful. The ones who went to art school because they had artistic abilities and they wanted to capitalize on it in order to make money were the losers who were not making money. Notice the difference? The difference is the passion is in us. So let's reap it. The event of Karbala was precisely for that reason, that there was injustice taking place, and the empire that had established itself was designed by a group of people who were very material, very short-sighted, and very unjust. And their desire was to enslave humanity. Today we have it. You go to some of these monarchies in the Middle East especially and see how they live and how they rule. Whereas the majority of the population is impoverished, they're living in palaces that even an army cannot, if an army was staying in these palaces, it would be, the palace would be too big for them. That's how decadent they are. The verse that my brother was reciting, the 17th chapter, Allah says, إِنَّ الْمُبَذِّرِينَ كَانُوا إِخْوَانَ الشَّيَاطِينَ وَكَانَ الشَّيْطَانُ لِرَبِّهِ كَفُورًا. Those who are reckless in spending are like the brothers of the devil. For the devil was indeed ungrateful to God. وَكَانَ الشَّيْطَانُ لِرَبِّهِ كَفُورًا. And that decadence leads to an imbalance in society, which creates an extreme group of people. Extreme poverty, extreme wealth. That's the economy of the world we have today. You find in nations today, the middle class is being eradicated. Even in North America, the middle class is being eradicated as we speak. There is the extreme rich and the very poor. And we have been designed today that as long as breadcrumbs are trickling from the ceiling, from the master above, we're satisfied and we don't raise our fingers. As long as the breadcrumbs are dropping, they're feasting up there, the breadcrumbs are dropping on humanity and we're satisfied. That's the human nature. As long as the breadcrumbs are coming, we're satisfied. That's not how the world should work. The resource of this earth is enough to feed the human race 4 times with the fullness of our stomach. Look at the irony. There are more obese people in the world today than there are malnutrition people on earth. Do you know that? That's a statistical fact. More obese people than there are malnutrition. How is that possible? You would think, well, hunger, the obesity, by the way, is not because they're eating good food. They're eating junk food. That's because there's so much depression that they're stuffing themselves through their mouths because of an imbalance of something. Psychological imbalances too. But look, if you study the world economics today, you see this situation taking place, which leads to all kinds of carnage and killing. Imam Hussain went to Karbala to teach us how to stop that. To show us the balance. Because the religion of God is based on a balanced system, and I'll say it very simply. You say, well, how? What is the religion of God that brings balance? Please tell me. I'm going to share some very interesting observations I've had in life. We talk about economic systems. We say, is it a capitalist system that's going to work? Is a socialist system working? Which economic system is the best for humanity? And that's debatable. I'm not interested in talking about that. You will find that a mixture of all of them are good. Even capitalism is not bad. It's good. Where the problem is that whenever you study any kind of economics or any kind of business, when growth is asymptotic, as we say, when you study a chart, and when growth accelerates asymptotically, meaning it's doubling, tripling, quadrupling very fast, you know it's going to burst. Because nature has built a system that when you do that, it cannot sustain itself. You just cannot sustain. We find that a steady growth system, a straight line rising consistently forever, is the only sustainable system. Any economic system that has an asymptotic growth It's a dangerous system and it's going to collapse. What makes it asymptotic? When you take the morals out of it. So the stabilizing agent of a chart is the moral. The minute you put morality into it, morals meaning what? Be just. Give the right due. Don't overcharge. Don't be a loan shark. Do not indulge in usury. Usury, credit cards, 26% interest rates. Loan sharks. This is usury. This is illegal. But look how legal it is for them. They can do it anyway. They can charge 55% if they want. There is nothing to stop them. Why? Because they control legislation. So poor people taking plastic, thinking, okay, it's my right. I can buy something. I need to buy it. Says it's okay, defer it tomorrow. 0 interest for 6 months. Track them. Get them involved. You buy something, now when the interest comes, you're dead in the waters. Take education loans. It's an irony. In the United States, 200 million people have education loans they can't pay back at 7.5%, where the going rate right now is 3%. A student still has to pay 7.5%. So they're working double time to pay that interest. Wasn't education the priority of humanity? Isn't that the most important thing? Well, you have to pay. But somehow we happen to get money from thin air when it comes to building armaments to destroy mankind. We seem to have an infinite budget to destroy the world, but we don't have a budget to take people's education away. It was the cost of education. We don't have a budget for that. Isn't that an irony? It's because there is some immorality in it that's driving things in a certain direction, and we all have to accept it. The moral argument is what drives everything smoothly. That the minute you come to humanity and say, I'm a businessman, I can make a lot of money from you, but I'm not allowed because I have to charge you a balanced amount and I have to share profits with you, that moral argument becomes very hard in a greedy system. But that's what's been happening in our societies today. So I don't want to go too deep into this, I just want to share with you that from a practical position, the tragedy of Karbala is at this level. To educate us at every level. Muawiyah and Yazid, as you know, was the one who orchestrated the massacre of the Holy Prophet's grandson. We find Muawiyah was an immoral man. He was a drunkard, he was a thief. In fact, when he died, his son was the heir apparent. As you know, Muawiyah II. He was a good boy. He ascends the pulpit of his father, and he says, my grandfather and my father were thieves and usurpers. They stole this right that God decreed upon the representatives, which is the Ahlul Bayt. And nobody deserves to sit on this authority than Ali ibn Hussain, the son of Hussain ibn Ali. This is the philosophy in Islam, that God decrees his representatives, not a royalty. There's a reason for that decree. So those who are chosen to sit on the seat of justice is precisely to prevent the injustice that are happening in the world today. So we as Muslims uphold this banner of Imam Hussain for this reason. That we're pragmatists, we're anti-oppression, we do not tolerate it, and we're ready to give our blood and our lives at the cost. If that's what it takes to bring freedom and equity and justice on earth, then let it be. But let us be proactive. The proactivity here means that we are blessed to be in this part of the world where you can turn on the computer. Look at this room. It's very, very wired, very technical. You've got buttons on your tables there. You can even speak through speakers. You've got all kinds of technology here, screens. We're living in a very unique world today where you and I are blessed to have knowledge at our fingertips. We're blessed to learn the secrets of the universe. We're blessed to be healthy. We're blessed that bombs are not dropping on our heads. We're blessed that we can walk to a supermarket and buy anything we want. We're blessed that we have all these bottles of water. There's a brother who just went to Somalia, and while he is helping those emaciated youth from starvation, he's asking them, what is your lifelong dream? And a young African boy says, my dream is to grow up as an adult to have a bottle of water in my hand at all times. That's his dream. If I asked you that question, you'd say, my dream is to be a surgeon, my dream is to be a doctor, my dream is to be an engineer, my dream is to be a pilot. The dream of a Somalian child is to have a bottle of water in his hand. Look at what we've done to the world. My God, the human race. Why does that happen? Because when the evildoers do it, and when the silent majority remains silent, then there's a tacit approval to the evildoer that yes, go ahead, we'll allow you to get away with it. The difference between that and the lesson of Imam Hussain in Karbala is no. We are a vocal minority and we're going to raise our voices and we will not allow such oppression to take place. Believe me, it's very philosophical, as I would say, but it's material in its fullest sense, every sense of the day. On a practical front, you're in academia today, you're in the university, you're offered drugs, say no. You're offered a system to cheat the system, say no. I'm an honest person. I do not break the law. You're given an opportunity to indulge in indecent activity, where there's a girl available or a boy is available, and you can have your passions, say no. Well, why not? I'm a biological being. I should have my right to express my freedom. Well, there's a price to pay for that. Go study those who do indulge. They have broken families. They have no trust with their children. They bring about broken nuclear families, which leads to all kinds of anxieties, which leads to all kinds of economic problems, which brings a degradation in the quality of a family. It's all at the level of morality that you and I have to hold back and say, no, I will chart my own destiny and I will make sure I am just, honorable, and modest in my transactions. And that my earning should be a halal earning, as we say in Islam, meaning the earning that is approved by God, not with cheating. Even if I make $1 billion a year, it should come in the way that I have not robbed or stolen from someone else. If we follow those protocols, we will spread a very loud message that the enslavers and the slave mongers will not succeed. Okay, I'm being philosophical here. From a practical point of view, this is the reason why we commemorate Karbala. To take that lesson, and subhanAllah, I thank God that God has given us the best role models on earth to teach us how to manage the affairs of the world and to take lessons today. And we are a nemesis to the devilish systems. I must say, the followers of Ahlul Bayt are a nemesis to the evil systems. I must say that, and I'm grateful to be that. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum. I know I've said a lot. There are many things I would like to express further, but I think during the Q&A session, if you have any questions or anything that I've said or touched on that needs a little explanation, I'm more than happy. And once again, I ask that you forgive me if I've stepped on any toes in anything that I've said. It's not intentional to hurt anybody. But I do believe that we're extremely blessed to have what we have. Let's make full use of it.